So it's 2003, and the Cheetah Girls movie has just premiered on Disney Channel, starring the amazing Raven Simone, two 3RW members, Adrian Balong and Keely Williams, as well as Sabrina Bryan. And no one could imagine that it would be one of the channel's biggest movies of its time and inspire a later High School Musical to come along. A group consisting of 4 girls, 2 black, 1 Latina, and 1 white, was a recipe for diversity that Disney Channel hit on the head. But how did we get from this to this? No shade to new actresses, I'm sure they'll be amazing. But how did we let Disney ease a predominantly black girl group into one that's predominantly white in 2026? This wasn't by accident. Disney has been toying with black characters and erasures since the very beginning. So let's talk about it. Hi everyone, I want to say before I start off this video, thank you so much. Thank you so much guys for 2,000 subscribers. Like, I cannot believe it. I literally cannot believe it. I'm literally just making videos from my bedroom, and the fact that I've got 2,000 subscribers on YouTube is amazing. Yeah, thank you for every comment, even though they may be bad sometimes. Like, engagement, I really do appreciate it, and it just motivates me to keep going. So thank you everyone for subscribing, and we've got a good video ahead of us. And as you can see from this title, we're going to be talking about the erasure of black characters when it comes to Disney. I want to be clear, I'm not talking about the erasure just on camera. I'm going to be talking about behind the scenes. I'm going to be talking about the representation, okay, the representation of erasure of black characters when it comes to Disney. And this was sparked by the Cheetah Girls and its renewal. And so it inspired me to do a deep dive into Disney, into their history with black characters and how we've got to where we've got to today. I'm Stereotypes the journalist. I hope you enjoy this video. Please do like, comment, and subscribe because you're gonna like this video. And yeah, every comment I do read and I do answer some of them. Check my other videos, I do answer some of them. And yeah, I did a lot of research in this, so I really hope that you enjoy it. And without further ado, let's get into the video. Song of the South. To understand the erasure and controversial past, we must look at Song of the South. Driven by the enormous success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, groundbreaking animation, and beloved characters like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, Disney had become one of Hollywood's most successful studios. But by the early 1940s, Walt Disney and his studio were facing serious challenges. The outbreak of the Second World War had severely reduced the company's box office income, forcing Disney to rely heavily on government contracts to produce wartime propaganda films. Characters such as Seven Dwarfs promoted war bond campaigns, while Donald Duck appeared in cartoons criticizing Nazi Germany. And at the same time, the studio was shaken by a major animator strike. Strongly opposed to organized labor, Walt Disney himself viewed the walkout as a personal betrayal and never fully reconciled with many of those involved, allegedly. Facing financial uncertainty and increasingly interested in live-action filmmaking, Disney began searching for new sources of revenue. He hoped to create a grand cinematic spectacle that could rival the enormous commercial success of Gone with the Wind that came out in 1939, which, after adjusting for inflation, remains the highest grossing film in history. Disney had previously purchased the rights to the Joel Chandler Harris Uncle Remus storybook, claiming to remember hearing the stories as a child and thought that the material was perfect for his new ambitions. Now, Harris was a journalist and writer who wrote down the stories he heard from enslaved people, then took all the profits when they became successful. His legacy has always been complicated, with black writers and scholars still divided on his efforts. Julius Lester, a folklorist and civil rights activist, said that the Uncle Remus stories, as told by Harris, were accurate characterizations of the original tales and, as such, were important parts of the black folklore. The author Ralph Ellison of The Invisible Man said that Harris's work taught us that comedy is a disguised form of philosophical instruction, and especially when it allows us to glimpse the animal insects lying beneath the surface of the civilized affections. Disney was well aware that adapting Song of the South would involve sensitive and controversial subject matters. To help address these issues, he recruited Clarence Moose, an acclaimed actor and the first African-American to hold a leading role in a feature film, as a script consultant. However, Moose soon resigned after his recommendations to give the black characters greater depth and dignity, which were allegedly repeatedly dismissed by the film's original screenwriter, Dalton S. Raymond. Raymond, whose only screenwriting credit was Song of the South, had filmed his early script drafts with racially offensive language and outdated stereotypes. Aware that this approach would attract criticism, Disney later brought in screenwriter Maurice Raff to revise the screenplay and reduce its overtly racist elements. And so in 1946, Disney released a live-action animated musical called Song of the South. The film was based on the stories of the fictional character Uncle Remus, who was very close to her Uncle Tom. The character was created by Joel Chandler Harris and was used to tell the struggle the South faced, especially in the plantation post-Civil War. The film follows 7-year-old Johnny during his stay on his grandma's plantation, where he befriends Uncle Remus, who was a worker on the plantation. And what's interesting about this movie is that during the creation of the film, Walt Disney called Ralph to help make this movie as inoffensive as possible to the black community. Ralph warned Disney when he learned about the film that doing anything with Uncle Remus could turn into an Uncle Tom stereotype. And for those of you who don't know, Uncle Tom is a derogatory term for a black person perceived as excessively submissive to white authority or as betraying their own community to gain approval or personal advantage. The phrase originates from Harriet Beecher's Stowe novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, though its modern meaning differs significantly from the character's original portrayal. Modern-day examples are often associated with Clarence Thomas, Candace Owens, Herman Cain, and Tim Scott, though these labels, as we know, remain highly subjective and controversial. Raph did his best to remove anything he considered harmful, but there was only so much one could do with the script. And when Raph asked him why Disney wanted to work on the movie, given his fear that the movie would inevitably be an Uncle Tom racist nightmare, Disney said, "That's exactly why I want you to work on it, because I know that you don't think I should make the movie. You're against Uncle Thomason and you're radical." Raph did take the job, but only lasted 7 weeks before an argument with Raymond saw him removed from the project. And of the 6 screenwriters credited on Song of the South, all of them are white. And when the movie was released to the public on the 27th of November in 1946, it was met with praise and criticism. The National Association for the Advancement of Coloured People sent a telegram stating that they recognise in Song of the South remarkable artistic merit in the music and in the combination of live actors and the cartoon technique. It regrets, however, that in an effort neither to offend audiences in the North or the South, the production helps to perpetrate a dangerously glorified picture of slavery. Making use of the beautiful Uncle Remus folklore, Song of the South unfortunately gives the impression of an idyllic master-slave relationship with a distortion of the facts. Uncle Remus' story in the movie involving Brer shows him wanting to run away from his problems, but the story ends with one cannot run away from their problems and there's no place like home. And this would seem like normal lessons, but because of the other controversies in the film and the fact that this lesson is combined with a symbol of black men, it's seen as compliance. The film debuted at Atlanta's Fox Feature, the same venue that hosted the premiere of Gone with the Wind. However, because racial segregation was still enforced in Atlanta, the film star James Baskett was unable to attend the event. Disney intended the release to showcase the studio's ability to produce a large-scale cinematic epic, capable of standing alongside Hollywood's biggest productions, reinforcing Walt Disney's ambitions to compete with the industry's leading filmmakers. And as I said, there was a lot of controversy with this movie. Uncle Remus's character not knowing if the movie takes place before or after Civil War, and Brer Rabbit is where most of the controversy started. In original folklore, Brer Rabbit was meant to symbolize oppressed black men who must use brain rather than brawl to outwit his more powerful masters. And so the NAACP picketed the movie, releasing a statement condemning the way for it perpetrates a dangerously glorified picture of slavery. And by the way, it's not on Disney Plus and it probably never will be. In March of 2010, Disney CEO Bob Iger said that there were no plans for a home release because the film was fairly offensive and antiquated. And one major public vote in the camp of publicly releasing the movie is Whoopi Goldberg, who said she was trying to find a way to get people to start having conversations about bringing Song of the South back, so we can talk about what it is and where it came from and why it came out. But despite the controversy surrounding the film, its best-known legacy is the song Zippity Doo Dah. The tune has remained widely recognised for decades, even as the film itself faded from public view. It's been performed or recorded by numerous artists, including the Jackson 5, Julie Andrews, Louis Armstrong, and Miley Cyrus. The song earned the film an Academy Award and is often ranked among Disney's most memorable music numbers. And some historians argue that its melody and title were likely influenced by the pre-civil minstrel song Zip, highlighting the complicated racial history behind one of Disney's most enduring songs. So let's get this out of the way. Song of the South is a widely racist movie. It was racist in 1946 and Disney knew it, and it never stopped being racist. Viewed today, Song of the South is often criticized not only for its racial stereotypes, but also for its slow pacing and moralizing storytelling. making it a difficult watch for audiences accustomed to modern Disney films such as Frozen or franchises like The Avengers. And many critics argue that the decision to produce the film was a serious misjudgment, even by the standards of its own era. In 1941, Disney released the animated film Dumbo, which has since become a classic. Despite its popularity, the film has been criticised for containing racist and offensive elements, particularly in their portrayal of the crows. Many people argue that the crows reinforce harmful African American stereotypes through their speech, clothing, and mannerisms. And as Pera explains, the crows are introduced wearing fashionable clothing such as spats, vests, striped turtlenecks, and pink sunglasses while casually smoking cigars. And some scholars have associated the lead crow with the name Jim Crow, although we don't know for sure. There ain't no evidence that this was in the official name and the official reason for the crows. The primary issue is not the characters themselves, but their minstrel style visual design. The crows are depicted with identical black colouring and exaggerated white eyes, features that closely resemble blackface minstrel imagery. And although these portrayals have been widely criticised, there is little evidence that the writer Dick Humor intentionally based the characters on racist stereotypes. For example, while the lead crow was voiced by Cliff Edwards, a white actor who imitated a Southern African American dialect, Humor also cast black voice actors to perform the supporting crows. A decision that was uncommon in Hollywood at the time. But I think we should note this because in a time where black people and black media wasn't highly regarded, we have the crows that somehow imitate the exaggerated behaviors that white people thought black people acted out. And it's interesting that they do this for the crows and they're smoking. I'm just saying. Guys, I loved Princess Tiana. I love, present tense, Princess Tiana.
I love this woman, this character. She's not even real, oh my gosh. I love this character so much that low-key, I would name my daughter Tiana. I don't know if that's crazy of me, but yeah, I just love her.
But anyway, let's talk about Princess Tiana because they did my girl wrong. Disney, in my opinion, did my girl wrong. The Disney Princess franchise has had a major influence on maintaining the Disney brand and its success. Made up of Snow White, Cinderella, Jasmine, and Tiana, among other princesses, the franchise deeply relies on a process of what bell hooks would call white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. And as a theoretical concept, the three main parts, white supremacist, capitalist, and patriarchy, reflect the framework on which The Princess and the Frog depends throughout the movie, where it pays favour to a benevolent white South, promotes a desire to sell one's products or labour at any cost in hopes of the American dream, and upward mobility, and upholds the notion that female autonomy or agency only serves as a placeholder for matrimony. Lessons on racial awareness or acceptance, by the way, have no place within that model. And as Neil A. Lester writes, as a globally dominant producer of cultural constructs related to gender, race, ethnicity, class, and sexuality, Disney reigns supreme, and part of that supreme reign is unquestionable privilege of patriarchy and whiteness. Disney isn't simply trying to create an entertaining film, it is building a brand. And every animated feature is designed with the potential to become a franchise that extends far beyond the movie itself. Success isn't measured only by ticket sales, but by how well a film can generate merchandise, partnerships, and long-term revenue. And that means every Disney film is expected to support an ecosystem, including sequels, television spin-offs, toys, clothing, games, books, la 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 la. We get the point. In other words, Disney's characters are created not just to tell a story, but to become marketable icons. And understanding this commercial strategy helps explain why the representation of characters like Tiana matters so much. As Disney's first Black princess, she was not only the lead of a film, but also the face of an entire franchise, making the choices surrounding her portrayals especially significant. The way race is represented in media is never accidental. I feel like we all know this. It's never accidental. Entertainment companies have often relied on stereotypical portrayals of non-white characters that reinforce a social hierarchy where whiteness is treated as the cultural norm and positioned above other racial identities. In many cases, characters from minority backgrounds are included not to explore their identities in a meaningful way, but to support narratives that continue to center white perspectives. I believe that The Princess and the Frog can be viewed from this lens. On the surface, introducing Disney's first Black princess appears to represent a major step forward in diversity. But some people have suggested that this representation promotes the idea of a post-racial society, where racial inequality is presented as largely resolved. And they argue that Tiana's relationship with a non-Black prince reinforces this message, creating the impression that racial barriers have overcome, without fully addressing the historical and social realities that continue to shape race and identity. After the election of President Barack Obama in 2008, news pundits and journalists began to explore the notion that the United States may be a post-racial, a country where race is no longer an issue. The eagerness to deem the country post-racial mimics efforts of color blindness. Both labels function to erase racial difference and distinctiveness in favor of adopting a singular culture that more similarly reflects white Western heteronormativity. And so the movie focuses on the relationship between Tiana and Charlotte LaBeouf, which I think is very important, but people may not pick this up. I think I'm gonna cook. I think I want to cook right now, guys. While Disney presents the two as close friends who support one another, I argue that this friendship oversimplifies the complex and often unequal relationship between Black and white women in the West. The film production describes Tiana and Charlotte's bond as one built on shared experiences and mutual respect. The friendship promotes the idea of a universal sisterhood between Black and white women, while overlooking the racial and social hierarchies that historically have shaped their lives. Although both Black and white women experienced gender discrimination, they did not experience it equally. During the era of slavery and segregation, white women still benefited from racial privilege, while Black women faced the combined effects of racism and sexism. And hip-hop feminist Joan Morgan describes this relationship by calling Black women, and at this time, Southern white women, stepsisters, rather than sisters, suggesting that while their stories were deeply connected, they were never equal. And from this perspective, Princess and the Frog represents an idealized friendship that smooths over historical inequalities instead of engaging with them in a more meaningful way. And from this, Disney presents their friendship in a way that softens the realities of race and class in the segregated South. And although the film portrays them as lifelong friends with a sister-like bond, people contend that this framing overlooks the significant inequalities that define their relationship. Tiana is someone who grounds Charlotte, and that suggests that some of Tiana's happiest childhood memories take place at the LaBeouf family mansion. However, I think that this interpretation ignores the clear economic divide shown literally on our screens, guys. Charlotte grows up surrounded by wealth and luxury, receiving expensive dresses, gifts, and every opportunity she could want, while Tiana watches from the sidelines and is expected to work from a young age. And at the same time, Tiana's mother, Eudora, spends her career making dresses for Charlotte, helping maintain the image and privilege associated with white femininity. And from this perspective, the relationship between the two girls is not one of complete equality. I think it reflects a historical pattern in which the labour of Black women supported and reinforced the status and desirability of white women. And by presenting this dynamic as a simple childhood friendship, I think that the film downplays the realities of racial and economic inequality, replacing a complicated history with a more comforting and idealized narrative. And in its eagerness to market Tiana and Charlotte's friendship as one based in equity and pluralism, Disney ignores the historical fact of Black and white women as systematically bred enemies, not sisters. And this is where the idea of sisterhood starts to fall apart. As I said, while both Black and white women lived under patriarchal society, their experiences were never the same. Black women have endured extreme violence, exploitation, and dehumanization in ways that white women historically have not. And that history created a relationship built on inequality rather than solidarity, while also helping establish white femininity as the standard of beauty and desirability, with Black women pushed to the margin. And so looking at Princess and the Frog through this lens makes Charlotte and Tiana's friendship feel much more one-sided than the film shows us. I will say that Disney made a clear effort to give Princess and the Frog a sense of authenticity by casting well-known Black actors and bringing in cultural consultants during production. However, I feel like these efforts didn't really change the story itself. Instead, the film relies on familiar Hollywood ideas about Black womanhood rather than presenting something genuinely new. The involvement of high-profile figures like Oprah Winfrey, for instance, helped strengthen the film's credibility. Their participation signaled to audiences that Disney had consulted Black voices and taken representation seriously, making the film feel more authentic. But at the same time, I think this helped shield Disney from criticism by reassuring audiences that the film had been endorsed by respected members of the Black community. For some people, Oprah's involvement is a form of validation, suggesting that Disney's portrayal of Black culture has been approved, even though many of the concerns about the film is still in question. I wouldn't include Tiana in this video if I felt that the film did a good representation of Black women, or just the Black experience in general. The issues surrounding the movie actually began long before the film was released. We must have all noticed that Tiana is literally physically present for only 17 minutes of the film's 98-minute runtime. 17 minutes we see her as a human, and the rest of it she's a frog. And because of that, Disney did get so much heat for it. Because why does Disney's first Black princess have significantly less representation and portrayal than all the other princesses that we've seen to date? And in my research, scholars actually contended that the film was shaped by a predominantly white perspective that minimizes rather than celebrates Black identity and Black womanhood. Instead of featuring the traditionally charming animal companions and magical mentors that is common in Disney films, a lot of people argued that several supporting characters draw on harmful racial stereotypes. For instance, The Firefly has been compared to a minstrel era where the film's portrayal of voodoo and its practitioners have been criticized for relying on exaggerated depictions of African spiritual tradition. I see no lies. No lies were told there. And I think there is an exaggerated physical feature of certain characters, particularly their buttocks, where these designs echo long-standing racial portrayals of Black bodies, dating back to the exploitation of Sagittae Bartman in 19th century of Europe. And therefore, I think that the issue is not only Tiana's limited visibility as Disney's first Black princess, but also the broader collection of stereotypes that shape the world surrounding her. And it's a shame because I would have loved to see Tiana be Tiana and see how a lot of the other characters interact with her as a Black woman. But we kind of only see her boss, her mum, her friend, and the people who's going to sell the restaurant to her. And even they seem a bit racist. I don't know what that's about. A lot of the time with Disney, they focus on themes and topics, but not properly representing them to their fullest. Let's talk about Soul. Soul stands out from most Disney animated films for many reasons. Unlike the studio's traditional family movies, its main characters are adults rather than children, and the story explores themes that are much heavier than audiences are typically used to when it comes to Disney. The film begins with the shocking death of its protagonist, Joe Gardner, and much of the narrative takes place after that moment as he navigates the afterlife in search of another chance to live. And while the premise is certainly original, I believe the film's central message feels noticeably different from those usually given to Disney's non-Black protagonists. Joe spends much of his story trying to help 22, a soul voiced by Tina Fey, and ultimately learns to accept the uncertainty of life and death. And compared to the more uplifting lessons often found in Disney's films about white protagonists, this definitely is much heavier. But like The Princess and the Frog, Soul initially appears to be a major step forward in representation, featuring a talented Black cast and Disney's first Black male lead. However, I believe that Joe Gardner is introduced through a familiar stereotype. From the beginning, his defining characteristic is his dedication to work. His dream revolves around his career as a musician and music teacher, and even his surname Gardner is the name of a profession. In contrast, many of Disney's white protagonists are driven by goals such as self-discovery, romance, adventure, or saving the world. And so because of this, I think both Joe and Tiana are defined primarily by the work they do, rather than by broader personal aspirations. The biggest issue, in my opinion, is how little time Joe also actually spends in his own body. Just as Tiana spends much of her film transformed into a frog, Joe spends a large portion of Soul as a blue soul, without the physical features that identify him as a Black man. And meanwhile, his body is occupied by 22, while Joe himself is placed inside a cat. And so I believe that literally Disney is continuing a pattern portrayal of its first Black protagonist, while their Black bodies are removed from the screen for much of their own stories. And instead of allowing audiences to spend time with these groundbreaking characters as they are, the films repeatedly transform them into animals, spirits, or other non-human forms. I don't know how we can ignore this. Like, we shouldn't ignore this. Disney's first Black princess spends most of her movie as a frog, while its first Black male lead spends most of his films either as a blue soul or a cat. Disney has never had a problem telling stories about green monsters, blue spirits, talking animals, or magical creatures, yet when they finally introduce their first black leads, most of them spend most of their time in their films as something other than black human beings. And to me, that's too much of a consistency to feel like a coincidence. And it's one of the biggest opportunities missed in Disney's history of representation. And it's interesting because when a company as influential as Disney decides to create a film on a group it has historically underrepresented, simply including that group isn't enough to convince us, or to convince me, that the representation is authentic. And that's because recognition alone doesn't automatically earn trust or credibility. Instead, major studios often rely on cultural consultants, respected public figures, and community organizations to help validate their approval. And these individuals act as cultural authenticators, reassuring audiences that the film has been reviewed by people with first-hand knowledge and experience of the culture being represented. So on the surface, decisions generally suggest that Disney wanted to portray black culture properly and avoid making mistakes, but they still made mistakes. They still made mistakes. These decisions can also be viewed through a business lens. Disney is known for carefully managing its public image, and partnering with trusted cultural figures helps strengthen the film's credibility while also expanding the appeal. But this raises an interesting question about authenticity and who has the authority to define it. And so I thought it was important that I speak about these shows before I speak about Cheetah Girls and before I speak about the new Cheetah Girls 4. I thought it was important that I speak about those things because when we look at how Disney has treated its black characters in the past, whether that's by Disney Channel or Disney films, we can see kind of where they're heading and we can watch out for things and we can see the erasure of some things in their future projects, such as this recent Cheetah Girls 4. So, let's actually talk about the Cheetah Girls. Just for some context, the original Cheetah Girls films are based on the novel by a black author called Deborah Gregory. The books originally featured characters of black and Afro-Latina descent and centered black and biracial girls. In the novel, all 5 girls are black, whereas in the film, only 2 of the 4 girls are black. I low-key did not clock that. You see, it's just the little things. It's just the little things they do. The books and Disney gave representation for an entire generation of marginalized young people, such as myself. I loved the Cheetah Girls. And it's often celebrated as the first multi-ethnic group created by Disney. And so several fans were disappointed, including myself, that a follow-up film centering the next generation of Cheetah Girls only features one black actor in its new main cast. Long before Disney Channel became synonymous with franchises like Hannah Montana, High School Musical, Wizard of Waverly Place, and the next generation of young Hollywood stars, the Cheetah Girls helped establish the network's identity. Released in 2003, the film became one of Disney Channel's first major original movie successes, proving that a television film could grow into a much larger entertainment franchise. More than 20 years later, it is still remembered as a defining part of early 2000s pop culture. The story follows 4 students at performing arts school who came together to form a girl group while navigating friendship, personal ambitions, and the challenges of pursuing success in the music industry. Its popularity extended far beyond the film itself. The soundtrack became a staple for Disney Channel fans like myself. The group's distinctive fashion made the characters instantly recognizable, and the cast became some of the network's earliest breakout stars. Like, guys, I loved the film when it came out. I cannot go on about how much I loved the film. I just loved it. The first movie was supposed to be a Disney Channel original movie, but its success quickly turned into something much bigger. Disney saw an opportunity to take a fictional group from the screen and build them into a real music act. The Cheetah Girls showed that Disney Channel movies could become something fans followed far beyond the original premiere. The impact the franchise had on different communities was massive, but there were people behind the scenes who made it that way. Deborah Gregory said the idea for the books first took shape after she interviewed Destiny Child at Houston Galleria Mall for Essence, a moment that planted the seed for what would become the Cheetah Girls universe. And 5 years later, Whitney Houston and producer Deborah Martin Chase, the first black woman to source a major studio production deal, joined forces to bring the story to screen, cementing it in both Disney history and the childhood of black girls everywhere. Having a black woman have a position of power like that was immense, especially for a cast that diverse. The racial representation and how the group all had a different ethnic background highlighted how they are all just young adult girls going through the same dreams and passions and the same issues. The series was naturally a breath of fresh air for young black girls coming of age at the time, when it was so rare to see characters who looked like myself in the books, let alone in a primetime movie. And Gregory has said that many details from the books mirrored her own life. For instance, Dorinda's upbringing in foster care and Galeria's black and Italian heritage pulls straight from Gregory's own experience growing up in New York. In an interview, she said, "I created this whole universe based on my concept of modern day life being parallel to the real jungle. Lions and tigers and bears. Naturally, that means they had to represent more than just a singing group. These girls have to have a set of ethics for surviving in the jiggy jungle. They had to be a crew. More than anything, I knew they had to be from different backgrounds, just like real girls." The Cheetah Girls gave little black girls space to dream before they even understood how often the world would try to stop them from doing exactly that. From the storylines to the outfits to the music to everything that happened behind the scenes, the Cheetah Girls hold a sacred place in black girlhood. It was the first movie I saw specifically glamorize black and brown girls' dreams. In the third movie, The Cheetah Girls One World, the girls travel to India and break many stereotypes about the country. It showed that Hollywood isn't the only music industry, that there is Bollywood too. The beauty of having a diverse cast and different shooting locations is the different cultures and perspective each person brings. From shooting movies in New York, Barcelona and Mumbai, the cultures of each city became cultural aspects of the storyline and played a large role in the development of the characters. In Barcelona, the girls were learning Spanish, listening to the beautiful music and interacting with locals who shared their culture with the girls. In India, the girls got to learn about the importance of elephants in Hindi culture, making wishes on a wishing tree. They learned Bollywood and they tried Bollywood dancing and they experienced Holi, the festival of colour. And both movies showed young kids the beauty of other cultures and countries even if they had never been outside of their hometown. Another aspect that made the Cheetah Girls stand out was its portrayal of girls from different socioeconomic backgrounds. At a time when conversations about wealth, inequality and opportunity remained relevant, the film presented a group whose financial circumstances varied significantly. Dorinda, unlike the other girls, grew up in foster care and did not have parents to rely on financially. And as a result, she worked to support herself by pursuing her passion for dance. In contrast, characters such as Galeria and Chanel were shown living more financially comfortable lives, with scenes of them shopping and enjoying privileges that Dorinda didn't have. And rather than ignoring these differences, the film acknowledged how family and economic circumstances can shape young people's experiences. And by presenting a diverse group of respected and supported one another, the Cheetah Girls offered young viewers and girls like me at the time a positive example of inclusion, acceptance, and encouraging people to value who they are. One writer said, "Some of our serious fans would even wager brought back girl power music, especially if you missed out on the Spice Girls or weren't old enough to really grasp the magic of Destiny's Child. The gal gang of the four were PG enough so that your parents would support your new obsession. But there was also a hidden blessing, your first lesson in intersectional feminism." A general critique of feminism is that even when women of colour are acknowledged, the diversity within POCs is often ignored for any representation. And this is why it was so important, because the novels and movies champion underrepresented stories, and this new rebuild doesn't seem like it's doing that. Now, granted, I don't know the story of what the Cheetah Girls 4 is going to be. I don't know. And I do trust that, Raven Simone and the people involved in the original movies will be a part of the rebrand, except for Aqua. It's kind of mad still, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, the diversity isn't really doing its thing. And I say this because I wholeheartedly understand there is a black girl there. There's also a white girl, there is a Latina girl, and there is an Asian girl. So the range of blackness is a bit different. We still do have one black person, but it's not as much as even the books, which was 5 black girls, gave us. And I understand that Disney wants to be more diverse and have an Asian girl in there. I get that. But at whose expense? A lot of the backlash wasn't simply about whether the new cast was diverse enough. It was about what kind of diversity was always being prioritized. Many of the tweets I've seen on Twitter have argued that the original Cheetah Girls wasn't just a multicultural group. It was, as I said, a franchise that intentionally centered Black girls at a time when there was rarely the focus during Disney stories. And I understand that the new lineup gives a different type of diversity, but as I said, at whose expense? Many people have missed the entire point of diversity, you know? I don't believe that diversity should be expanded at the expense of Black representation. I feel like as Black people, we're always constantly expected to make room for broader diversity, while Black-led stories are often the first to be diluted or replaced. The criticism isn't about diversity in itself, it's about seeing Black representation treated as interchangeable, even in franchises that originally existed to put Black girls at the center of the story. And so if Black women are not at the center of a story that was meant to be for them, I question, is the story even worth making? I don't think so. But anyway, I've come to the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Do let me know your thoughts on the erasure, on what I've spoken about, the erasure of Black characters in Disney. And let me know your thoughts. Please do comment below. As I said, I do read all of my comments, so a lot of them. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. I do read a lot of my comments. You might as well subscribe. Let's push it past 2K. Let's get like, I don't know. Let's just push it. Let's push it beyond 2K. I am Serena, the journalist. I do have a Substack where I write a lot more than my videos, because the videos can take a bit long to produce. So please do follow my Substack. It should be here. Hopefully it's here. At Serena the Journalist. Yes, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much, guys, for the 2K again. If you made it here, thank you so much, because I don't know how long this video is going to be. This has maybe been like 50 minutes, so I don't even know. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon for another video. Bye.